I am Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? My guest today is my friend Sergio Nazarro. He is a real estate mogul, right? I think you're a mogul. He's a veteran. He's a good man, and he's somebody who's profoundly interested in personal development and living his best life. And so I'm super happy to have you on the program. Thanks for coming on, Sergio.
Dude, Jeff, thanks for having me on. I wanted to howl, but my son's napping downstairs, and I don't want my wife to beat me up after the fact. So I'm kind of jealous. But just know that I was howling inside.
Yeah, that's good. So anybody out there who was going to give him some howl shading, some howl shade, some howl hatery because he didn't howl, that's why. Okay, he doesn't want to wake up the child. That's a good reason. It's really the only good reason. I don't tell my other guests that don't howl that they should howl, but that's really the only good reason.
The only one. The only one.
Yeah, exactly. Just kidding, other guests who didn't howl. I love you. All right, you're amazing. Great. So I'm super excited to have you on the show. I just wanted to start off with kind of a little bit of let's get to know Sergio Nazarro, or as I like to call him, Sergio Nazarro. Hey,
very Italian.
Are you Italian?
I'm very Italian.
You're very Italian. Okay,
I got the hairy chest to prove it, man. I got the look at this, dude. I'm a walking stereotype. I got a gold chain. That's where I know how to. That's where I stopped shaving.
Does it have like a bowl or something on it? What's on the gold
it's an Italian horn.
That's awesome. That's great. That's good. I like it. It. You're living into it.
That's right.
Good. And then where are you from? Where do you live? And tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of a little bit of your history, a little bit of your path.
Yeah, dude. So I'm from Denver, Colorado. I've been out here since 1996. Went to the Air Force Academy here in Colorado Springs, graduated from there, served my country for 6.5 years in the Air Force as an officer, got out, decided that I wanted to be a CrossFit coach. That doesn't pay a whole lot of money. So I went to grad school so that I could actually have a stipend to pay for my rent. Landed in real estate, did that for the last 6 years. And I started my own coaching company back in February, and I've been helping men and women wake up and live into their fullest potential in their marriage and in their business.
Fantastic. That's awesome. That's really great. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about your history as a veteran. Did you serve? I feel like I gathered that you served in Afghanistan. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was in Afghanistan for 7.5 months. Dude, that was a wild experience. Like reflecting back on that, I was there from, August of 2012 till February of 2013. And man, it was right in the middle of us transitioning over to the Afghan government. So there was a lot of blue on green, basically mean Afghans killing Americans. And my job was to travel around with an interpreter and work with the Afghans. So it was, it got hot and heavy for a bit.
Wow. That's crazy. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Nice. Yeah. And obviously we're in the thick of it right now in the world, but we could kind of get into that a little bit later because I'd love to hear your take on it as a veteran. So one of the things I think is interesting about you is you divide life into 4 quadrants and sort of look at each of those areas in terms of like how am I performing and that kind of thing. Could you just break that down for us a little bit, your attack on that?
Yeah. So there's 4 domains that we work in. Body, being your health and your fitness. Being, meaning your connection with yourself and your creator. For me, it's God. Balance, even though I don't believe in work-life balance, balance is the part of us that's our relationship. So mine's with my wife and with my kids. And then business, right? The thing that we are creating to help provide the lifestyle that we want and support the relationships that we have. And so I've been able to break this down into these 4 areas and really start to see how they all impact one another. How you being in shape is going to directly impact your ability to sell. You having a great marriage is going to have a direct impact on your connection with God. Your connection with God is going to impact your ability to produce at a high level. And so all of these different things for me have come together, whether it's God or the universe, it really doesn't matter. It's really whatever your spiritual thing is. But the the connection of all four of those allows you to look at life and see how they all relate together, so that as we're moving through it, we understand that if I do this here, it's going to have an impact in all other areas that I live in.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I definitely see a lot of resonance in my own life with that perspective. And I know kind of just getting to know you a little bit through your posts and that kind of thing that you've really you've had some challenges, you've gone through it. I mean, wow. Sounds like there were some a little bit of dark times that you were able to navigate through. I'd love to hear about that. I'd love for us to just kind of dig in a little bit into your sort of journey into darkness and back here into the light.
Yeah, man. It all started with, returning from my deployment from Afghanistan. I think some of the stuff that I experienced there and watching people, get killed right in front of me multiple times, right? Multiple experiences with that was tough. Living at that high level of just hypervigilance for 7.5 months, it changes you. So I come back and I'm trying to reintegrate into my life, and my life didn't change for 7.5 months. I changed, and I come back and everybody's different, but it's because I'm different and their lives have changed too. And so that reintegration process is hard. Can't really relate to anybody at that point. And I start to struggle with PTSD. And so I turn to drugs and alcohol, and I'm messing around with that for a long time, kind of get sucked into that. And, it's these moments where I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, sedating with drugs and alcohol and women. And now I get to this point where this girl breaks up with me and I'm forced to face my own inner demons. It was one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me, right? I mean, breakups are tough, but sometimes they rattle the cage a little bit and force you to wake up and ask yourself, well, am I the man that I want to be? And it was in that moment that I started to realize I needed to seek professional help. So I got a therapist, I got a coach, and I was in therapy for 2.5 years. And along that ride, that identity change from getting out of the military after being in for 11.5 years, I didn't think it was going to have that big of an impact on me, but it did. Everything I had known since I was 18 was flipped on its head. And now I'm starting to have an identity crisis. I'm struggling with, I just mentioned to you, and now I'm not making any money. And I'm just in this position being like, what in the hell is going on? How do I recover from this? And so for 2.5 years, right, I was in therapy twice a week, every single day. And it's hard, man, because you're forced to realize that in those moments where you're it's easier for me not to be here. I'm glad I'm honestly too much of a pussy to do it, man. I don't think I could do it, but I'm glad that I didn't. And so coming back on the other side of
you mean commit suicide? Is that what you mean?
Take my life. Yeah.
Right.
To come back on the other side of that, just kind of almost like a rebirth. It was just the beginning. I'd just gotten to maybe equilibrium. And then it was really the work started to begin, because as I started to get into a relationship, one that I wanted to be in, with a girlfriend, all the insecurities resurface. And on the outside, I looked like I was stoic, calm, had my stuff together. But on the inside, I was scared, I was hurting, I was insecure. There was a lot of doubt, there's fear. And now you bring that into a new career that's commission based only, and a relationship that's had its struggles. It's the perfect recipe for what I would like to call a relapse in the whole thing. Yeah,
definitely. Wow. Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so glad that you turned around. I've done a considerable amount of work with veterans. I did a film called Sandstorm that is about a guy with PTSD, a short film that I did that went to a bunch of festivals. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I really appreciate the plight of the warrior, and also, how unbelievably tragic it is that more of our men and women in uniform, die from suicide than they do from battle by a lot.
It's because the VA is a joke. The VA is a joke. And this is not a shot at the doctors at the VA. This is not a shot for the people that are volunteering and working at the VA. But the system as a whole is broken. The fact that the government thinks that they're actually providing services to us is complete BS.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And I know there's also I've also dealt with a lot of first responders, and there's kind of a similar mentality in terms of at least the people who are doing the work, they don't want to, and this may or may not apply, but a lot of those folks, there's a stigma, like they don't even want to ask for help. And so then they don't. And then all of a sudden they're like, after seeing all these emergencies day after day and all the horror things that people that are involved in paramedic, that life also see, of course it's gonna pay its cost. But what's interesting to me, like I'm just curious, since we're talking about it, like for you, what would be a positive transformation in terms of the VA? Would it be that they would be more, aggressive in terms of like getting people to do therapy and really asking questions to make them confront their own demons, or like what would make the change?
I mean, you have to think about the juxtaposition of this whole thing. You come in trying to turn men and women into warriors. And then on the way out, you're trying to strip the warrior out of them and soften them back up to send them into the real world. And the front end of it, if you think about it, right, it's what? Maybe 8 weeks of basic training followed by the additional training that you're going to do. And if you ever deploy, you're going to get some additional training. Let's just say 2 years total. 2 years of total training. And then on the way out, you're going to give me some 10-day course on how to reintegrate. Get out of here. Like you can't strip that out of somebody. And I'm not saying it needs to be the same process, but it's broken. Because what you've taught us is to, hey, shut it down, focus on the mission, get it done. Mm-hmm. And so when we get out, it's like, well, what do we do? You've just taught us to be self-sustaining, but we never taught us how to like process this type of stuff. Now, some people are better than others, right? Like I think about like Jocko Willink, like he seems like he's been able to process some things, and I don't know his story about like how he was able to manage it. But from a guy that was in the Air Force that never had to raise my weapon and kill somebody, I still had a lot of stuff that impacted me. I can only imagine what happens when you're in combat and you see one of your friends' lives get taken. The ratio just isn't there. So how do you fix it? I have no idea. I have no clue.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I'm always, particularly now, I think I have so many friends who've been affected by what's going on in Israel. Like I have Israeli friends. I have a friend in Israel, who is also a veteran and is in a wheelchair as a result of combat that he had with Hezbollah in like 2006. But and all these other friends who are not related to actual people that are in Israel, but are watching all the videos online of Hamas torturing people and that kind of thing. And then now they're seeing those things, like similar to you saw people get killed in front of you. Now they have the memory. They actually saw the visceral thing, and now they're all spun up about it because you can't unsee that. And how do you get rid of those visuals? I mean, it's one of the reasons I've seen enough of that stuff in my life that I won't go out and seek it out. I'm not going to look for it. So on that note, I'm just curious, like, obviously you mentioned, you had to see some of that, and I'm not going to ask you to get into specifics because I wouldn't do that. But I'm just wondering for you, like, was there some key thing that really helped you, allowed you to get over it, to give yourself acceptance and forgiveness, to make you feel safe again? Was there a process?
I think a lot of it was meditation, journaling, yoga, working out, talking about it. I think I finally gave myself permission to just be like, you know what, this ain't gonna work for me, man. I didn't really know how to process it at the time. I mean, what happened to me, and this the best way I can explain it, is that in going to Afghanistan, I chose to end things with a girl and with, just with closing down connections. I want to have to deal with anybody on the way out. And doing that, I started to shut down parts of me, all the emotions, like the spectrum of emotions that humans are supposed to feel.
Yeah.
And when returning, and what I think happened was when this girl broke up, or when we broke up, because it was mutual. I'm not trying to paint her as a bad person in this, but when we broke up, there was this flood of emotions that had not hit me in a long time. Sadness, anxiety, depression. I realized that my happiness was only when I was fucked up on drugs or alcohol. And I came to this realization of being like, listen, man, like that's That's not normal. Like, of course, these
Mm-hmm.
substances are supposed to make you feel a certain type of way. But if my constant state is this over here, well, then I need to figure this out. And honestly, I went to therapy to get over a girl. And what came up was everything else that I was struggling with. So the one thing that I know is that I couldn't do it by myself.
Okay.
And trying to be like the stoic, tough guy, right? That's why I have all these tattoos. I'm softer than a baby, dude, inside. But trying to be that guy, like I wasn't that guy. And so I had to have like an honest conversation with myself, just being like, listen, man, it's okay to be hurting. It's okay to not know. But it's also okay to just like raise your hand and be like, hey, I need help. And it was scary because, as a military officer, as a man, whatever, it's one of those things where the stigma was heavy. Now it's gotten better since then. But it's still a heavy stigma of going to therapy because it makes the assumption that you're broken. It's like when people are like, hey, I don't want to drink anymore. They're like, oh, did you get a DUI? Do you have a problem? It's like, no, dude, I just want to be healthy. Oh. So I feel like it falls in line with that. I know that's a long-winded answer of just saying like I needed professional help, but.
No, that's great. I mean, I think, one of the main takeaway there for me is like you asked for help. You needed help and you asked for help. And people, that's not a normal thing that people do. We don't want to ask for help. We don't want to give people our problems. We're accustomed to this culture where you ask somebody how they're doing, they're going to the automatic thing answer is great. How are you doing? When, come on, man, there's so much other shit going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain, underneath that you're not telling me. I always make it a point if I'm having a bad day to tell somebody, how are you today? I'm shitty today. And then they ask why, and then I'll tell them or I won't tell them depending on how I'm feeling. But like, I think it's, it's for me, it's part of everybody just wants to look good all the time, no matter what, period, end of story, and that's actually more important than connection and love and vulnerability. But it's so shallow and weak, if we're just trying to look good all the time and just pretending that we're not the way that we actually are. How is that living? So I really want to acknowledge you for asking for help. And obviously, you're making it a mission to live an authentic life, one in which you really are fully living this life. And so I appreciate that as well.
I appreciate that, man.
Especially given your journey.
Yeah. And I think within therapy, it forced me to start to be like ruthlessly honest with myself. I'm not okay. I'm struggling with this. I don't know how to receive love. I don't know how to take help. And then identifying that, I was like, well, if I don't know how to receive help and allow people to give me the things I need, then I need to learn how to do those things. And now my life, what I'm trying to emulate and what I'm trying to create when I speak on social media, when I'm on this podcast, is just being honest. And you may not like it. You may not even agree with it, but I'm going to be the most honest man in the room. And I'm not here to hurt anybody, but if what I say offends you, we can have a conversation about it. But I think it's that honesty that allowed me to heal. Because without it, to your point, oh, I'm good. Everything's good. And then I get home and I'm chugging like, tequila or sitting on the couch popping pills. And it's like, oh, I'm not good.
Right. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I really want to, I commend you for that. And it's also just kind of it's really, I think what we're touching upon is it's really a cultural pandemic, this idea that we need to not tell the truth, that we need to not be honest, not be vulnerable with each other. It's something that I'm firmly committed to fucking stopping that shit. All right. Just in case anyone didn't know, I'm firmly committed to just people being real and being their most authentic, most alive, most honest self, because as you say, it's just it's so incredibly toxic to pretend that we're not the way that we are and to not ask for help. So that's really great. So one of the things that I've heard you talk about in your social media posts and et cetera is this idea of scarcity, which is something that I'm keenly interested in and intrigued about. I feel like along with everybody trying to look good all the time, we're also secretly scared and that we don't have enough. We're constantly in this mentality and convinced that this is all we're going to get and there's no way out of it. how does that affect you? How do you come at scarcity in terms of performance?
You have to start with giving yourself some appreciation with how far you've come. Like, we never give ourselves credit for anything. And so what I've tried to implement is a regular practice of, well, let me see how far I've come in the last few weeks or the last few months. Because without appreciation and honoring all of the gains that we've had in our life, then our aspirational views of what we want to go, where we want to go, it operates like a horizon. And as we're trying to move towards the horizon keeps moving. We can never get to where we actually want to go. And that creates this gap in our mind that builds this constant level of scarcity. But if you can appreciate how far you've come, and then you can use that horizon as aspiration, well, then you can recognize that you're just on a path to achieving whatever is next for you. And you have actually everything you need. Like, the mission that I'm after is to help people have it all in their life. And the reality is, most people already have it all. If they really broke it down, like, I'm healthy, I have a connection with my creator, I have a wife and a son, and I have a business that's doing well. So if I looked at that today, I have everything I need. But I aspire to be more. So that creates a gap. And that gap can be powerful. But that gap can also create scarcity. And so one of the things you have to recognize is like, well, where's your mind at? More importantly, what are the actions that you're taking? Right now, in a lot of sales jobs and commission jobs, people are restricting, spending less, investing less. They're preparing for a winter, if you will. And that's the first sign that, like, your business is going to, it's not going to do well. There's smart business decisions, and then there's just decisions made out of fear. And those scarcity decisions that happen in your business then bleed into your marriage. And now scarcity in your marriage looks a lot like, we just can't go out to dinner tonight. It's like, well, you have the money. You're just saying that you don't because you're afraid. So what is the message you're sending to yourself? And so I think scarcity is a scary thing, man, because it can creep in and it'll infiltrate your life like a SEAL team. And before you know it, it's just your new operating system.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that's really great. It's something that I talk about a lot on this podcast is, that what we've inherited is really a fear-based operating system, that we come from just automatically being afraid, and how do we avoid threats constantly? Whereas if we were to come from a love-based operating system, not in like an airy-fairy, I'm just going to love everyone all the time, no matter what. Not like that. Like love as a resource, as a value, as something that when I'm actually feeling like the love that I have for my wife, or the love that I have for children, or the love that I have for performing music, then that really opens something up in me. If I'm looking at how do I actively love more in my life, love the people around me, love my family, regardless of what they did, regardless of what's happened, I don't know about you, but I have certain relationships in my life where I had to overcome a lot of things that I could have just stuck in the land of judgment and Grudgeville, and just then I wouldn't have a relationship. Even my father, my father passed away in March, and he and I had an awesome relationship because I chose to cultivate an awesome relationship with him, because I came from taking responsibility for the stories that I had about him, because I came from forgiveness and acceptance and love, and we talked about that openly and manifested that. But yeah, scarcity and also coming from a fear-based operating system, particularly when you're not admitting that that's where you're coming from, where you're not saying, okay, you know what, I'm totally embroiled in fear right now, and I'm not going to ask for help. I'm just going to get cancer. Because really that's what happens, whether it's an actual illness of actual cancer, or it's a cancer of the spirit where you just aren't living your best life, or not even living your kind of better life. You're just really stuck in the vault of scarcity and denial and sadness and depression and victimhood and powerlessness,
Yeah.
And it really all starts with admitting, I'm coming from scarcity right now. I have an idea that there's not enough. And also recognizing that spiral, that there's like, if I am in a place of scarcity, that's all there's going to be for me, is just more and more scarcity, and I'll never see my way out of it. But as you pointed out so eloquently, if you actually look at what you've accomplished, that gives you a lot. That gives you someplace to stand. You can see, oh wait, no, I have been doing all of these things. Look at all these things that I've accomplished. Oh wow, I am building something. I am doing something. I know for me, I just did a concert on Sunday, and it was a really big deal for me to do this concert. I performed 25 of my own songs.
Nice.
I had a friend come up and play with me. Yeah, and it was like really great. I've been going through the footage now, looking at my performance, and I'm like, oh, now my voice is way better than it ever has been because I've been working on it for the last 5 years. Yeah. Now my songs are better than they ever have been because I've been working on them. I've been practicing them and I've been connecting to them. Oh, now I see it. And it's hard for me, even me, like somebody who espouses love operating system and talks about being grateful and stuff like that. Even me, I'm just like, wait, you can't really, abandoning the idea that, that I'm not good enough, that we are not good enough it's so challenging. Like you really need some very stern evidence to the contrary to see. And, I think I can say at this point, I see like that the concert that I put on is really good, and the fact that I can watch it and be like, oh no, I did good there. That means that I've accomplished a lot. Yeah. That and just gratitude, as you say, like being grateful. That's the gateway to so much.
100%. And I think the people's ability, like this is very counterintuitive, like willingly choose to go seek scarcity in your life. Like, where is it? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we don't want to go look for it. So we just sweep it under the rug. And in doing that, It's no different than getting into an argument with your spouse and knowing that you need to have a conversation with it, but you just ignore it and let resentment build up. Like the more you ignore the scarcity, the more it starts to take hold. It's kind of like bringing a light on a cockroach. They scatter once you bring it. You have to bring light to these things and just vocalize it and talk about it, no differently than you just did. And it's in that moment that you can start to make adjustments as you need to. But we're all going to have it. You could be the most grateful person in the world, and there's some spot in your life where you're going to have scarcity. It could be that the fact that you look down at your body and you hate the way that you look, or your bank account, or your marriage, or your relationship with your kids, or your relationship with your creator. There's scarcity everywhere. You just got to go find it.
Yeah, just because you ignore your shadow doesn't mean it's not there. In fact, the more you ignore it, the bigger it gets.
I tend to look up and not see the shadow, so I can just like pretend it's not there at all. Like if you just,
but you run into things a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's why I have all these scars on my face.
Yeah, that's how you got hit by the car.
Yeah. Don't do what I tell you to do. If you're listening to this while driving, do not look up.
Yeah. I think, you're touching on something that's kind of a frequent topic of conversation on this podcast as well. I have a good friend of mine, Sterling Hawkins, who wrote a book called Hunting Discomfort. Also lives in Denver, by the way. You guys should be friends.
Nice.
But yeah, we talk about that a lot. I talk about it with a spiritual teacher friend of mine as well. This idea that if you hunt discomfort, that if you look for your scarcity, if you're actually looking, well, what's in my backfield? What are the actual things that I'm so afraid of that seem so scary or lacking in my life? That's where the juice is. We don't want to look at those things because, first of all, it's going to make us look bad, which that violates cardinal rule number 1, right? Looking good and being right are kind of the main, according to Landmark and also me and also Buddhism and a lot of other traditions. Looking good and being right are two of the like worst. Those are what we're most concerned about. So if we actually expose our shadow and say this is what's really going on, then we're afraid that we're going to look bad. But how do you can't heal the thing that is injured unless you're willing to look at it and put a Band-Aid on it,
Yeah.
And really like give it the love and the light that it needs. It's just going to fester and get worse. And I think that's, look, my attitude is I'm going to feel uncomfortable anyway. I'm going to be miserable no matter what. I'm going to experience suffering, and it's going to be worse if I don't look for the thing that is there. It's going to come up and it's going to blow up in my face, and then it's going to be really bad. You know, to the extent like kind of what you were talking about earlier, where you get to a place where you're like, oh, I'm just trying to pretend like all this PTSD that I've got isn't really haunting me. So I'm going to numb myself with all these drugs and pretend like I'm happy for the 5 minutes that it hits me. And then I'm going to come back and be even more miserable and want to take my life, you know?
Yeah.
But that's how we operate. And I think transforming this idea and making it cool to hunt your discomfort, to look for your shadow, to expose your dark side, like that's going to really transform society. I know it transforms my life, and I can tell it transforms yours as well.
Yeah, I think a big thing that allowed me to do that was psychedelics and weed. 100%. Like, it brings everything to the forefront. I mean, you don't have a choice. Those things are there. And in my experience, every time I've gotten stoned or every time I've eaten mushrooms, they've come to the forefront of the things that I need to face the most. They've always been there. They've just now are held up to me, and I'm forced to reconcile that and process that in the moment. Now, luckily, I have friends who are also doing their own internal work, and we can have conversations about the things that come up when we're in the middle of Zion, hiking out of a canyon, having conversations about whatever it is that we're doing. And it's a beautiful place to be, to have that, support, and also be able to be in that mindset to kind of reframe things. So you're right. It's not exciting work. It's transformational work, and there's ways to accelerate it too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. And looking forward is the key, being willing, the willingness to look. I mean, it's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym, you work out, you're going to be sore. You're going to be sore. It's hard. Those last reps that you do. I mean, I went to the gym this morning. The last reps, I'm grunting, it's not comfortable and it's not fun. I mean, there's something I get out of it because I feel like I'm pushing myself and I'm exerting and I'm expressing something, some angst that's always there, but it's not fun.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about it, but then later the results are great, that I am stronger, that I feel good about myself. And even just emotionally and spiritually, I feel better because I know that I pushed myself.
Yep.
And so I think that's, and a lot of people are able to do that with weights, but they won't do that with emotions. They won't look at.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my coaches told me, he's like, you are sedating with working out. He told me, your ability to go work out and push your body through something, you feel like you are improving, and physically you are, but you're not listening to your body and the message it's telling you. I had a heart attack at 34. And if I had paid attention, I probably would have been able to see the signs and listen to my body and pull back on what I was doing. But I was able to disconnect my mind from my body. And so for the last few years, I've been trying to get my mind, my heart, my soul, and my essence on the same fucking team. And we're finally to a spot where it's working together. And in that, being able to recognize that, now I'm able to process things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just curious, because you seem like a super healthy dude. Was the heart attack related to eating or drugs or?
No, I think it was stress. So at the time, my wife and I, we were engaged. We had just called off our wedding because we were fighting so much. Okay. And that was when we made the decision to get into couples therapy. So I was in individual therapy for 2.5 years, got out, got into this relationship, got back into couples therapy. And I think just the stress of that, and then the stress of being in a sales job, which was new to me. I mean, it's heavy. Yeah. It's very heavy because you have all these pressures to produce and then not look like a failure in your relationship. And those two things, the amount of inertia that's required to build a new business is it's hard, man. It's going to take a toll on a relationship. Yeah. It can.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, for sure. So that's something else you brought up that I definitely want to talk about with you, which is
Nice.
marriage. I'm married also, just going on a year. We just celebrated our 1 year anniversary. We've been together for about 5 years, and each of us has had kind of a lot of relationships until we found each other, and then we were like, oh, this could really work. We really are going to empower each other and we could really make a big impact with our lives and who we are and what we do. She's also a coach and really powerful at it. She's also really been super successful in business, and she's beautiful, and I love her, Christine. But we fight also, and even yesterday we got in a pretty good doozy of one, but we were able to stop and listen to each other and look at why each of us said the things that we said. And it's, at this point we're not like in the name calling phase. We don't do that, but we'll get mad. And then we'll stop, we'll take a break. I've gotten a lot better at like walking away and just collecting myself versus just, lashing out or whatever, and then pausing until I can get back together what I'm trying to communicate. She gets a little less aggressive in terms of her defensiveness. Like I think it's normal to fight. That's going to happen with the person who's closest to you. But it's still it's an ongoing evolution in terms of our relationship. And I think most people, I know a lot of what you share about is about marriage and about how you have a successful relationship with your wife. And so I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that journey and tips that you might offer us.
Listen, and we're not perfect. We get into fights all the time. And I think what's beautiful about it is, coming back to the honesty piece of it, is we realize that we're not fighting each other. We're fighting for the relationship that we want. And so sometimes that requires you to have the hard conversations with one another. It's hard to step into the arena with your significant other, knowing that what you're about to say is going to cause some disruption. But if it's not said, the pain that will transpire 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road will be way worse than what's about to happen. You have to be willing to go to bat for something. And so the conversation that we had on Sunday was, dude, we are in this circle jerk of a relationship right now. Connection, disconnection, fighting, making up, love, anger, peace, chaos. And it's just going in circles. And we're sitting here being like, okay, if this continues to play out, I mean, this just happened. If this continues to play out, where are we going to be in 5 years? And we're both like, probably divorced. It's a hard conversation to have with somebody you love. And so we're sitting here and it really comes down to just a few questions. Like, well, where are you at, babe? Like, based on what we just talked about, where are you at? Okay. Well, what do you want? Well, why do you want that? And so getting anchored in where we're at, getting clear on where we want to go. And then as long as we both are clear on here, well, then this just becomes the starting point. But this requires truth, honesty, connection, vulnerability. And this is the part that everybody struggles with. Everybody starts about, well, what do we want? Cool. We want this marriage where we have sex 3 times a week and we go on these vacations. Cool. Mm-hmm. You're not even going on date nights. So why don't we start there? And so my advice is like, listen, you got to start to get honest with where you're at, even if it's hard. Because without the honesty, there is no growth. Because then everything that you try to create in the future is just fantasy. And that's where most people want to live, because it feels good. Nobody wants to live in the pain. But the pain is where all the transformation happens.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know also for something that's really helpful for us, for my relationship, and is gratitude and appreciation, just goes so far. Being willing to be grateful for the things that are there, that are so clear. That's something that makes a huge difference for us. Yeah. And I know also, like, having a shared spiritual, connection, like we meditate together, we do psychedelics together. Sometimes we do ayahuasca, and that builds something that's kind of beyond us and highlights what are we really out to accomplish beyond the basic, beyond the ordinary, and also connects us much more deeply to source, to creator, to God, to whatever you want to call him, or her, as I like to think, you know what I mean? Yeah. How important that is in a relationship. So then also I'm curious about your psychedelic experience. You mentioned mushrooms and like that. Is that something that you've used therapeutically, or how often? What's your kind of experience with plant medicine?
Yeah. I mean, I've microdosed quite a bit. I've never done anything like a specific like journey that's on my list of things to do. A guided journey. I've explored a lot with plant medicine just out in nature, man. To me, it's a really great way for me to connect with myself, ground myself, and connect with whatever's around me. But there's never been like an intention. There's never been a thought behind it outside of that. For me, what I found is that psychedelic experience, it's going to show me whatever it is that I need. And the fact that I can bring my spirit, my creator, God into the whole thing, and now I'm in whatever environment I'm in, like I just let things kind of play out, and I don't try to force it. I don't try to fight it. I just try to be with it. And it's shown me what's important. Like I got back from Zion after hiking out. We were doing a 18-mile trip with my buddies, and I'm eating mushrooms on the way out, and I just have this moment where I'm like, dude, we're in the golden age of our life right now. All of us have our health. We all have money. Nobody's passed away. The majority of our parents are together. Our kids are healthy. And I'm just sitting there being like, what? Like, this is it. Like, it's only going to get worse. And then in my mind, that's where it went. But then I flipped the script and I flipped the script and I was like, you can look at those events as it's going to get worse, or you can look at those events as it's part of life, and the bond that you have with those people is going to be indicative of the actions that you take outside of what just those thoughts that just came. So I came home, and out of that, right? Because it's easy to go down this path of like, oh, my parents are old, they're going to pass away. And like, what happens if my wife passes away? And like, what happens if my heart and I die? But the alternative was like, well, what do I want? Coming back to what do I want? So I started to date my parents, taking them out on lunch dates a couple times a month, taking my sister
Glad you
out
clarified.
On dates. Yeah. I'm not making out with my mom or my dad for that matter.
Good. Good.
Yeah. But I think it's like being able to invest in those relationships. And so
yeah,
I think it's just perspective for me.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's beautiful. Yeah. My, as I said, my dad passed away in March. And so I've been kind of dealing with a lot of that. And I'm pretty sure I'm a little older than you are. I feel like sort of my golden age, it just kind of continues. I'm all about like being as healthy as I possibly can, and seeking out how do I get more healthy. I'm doing a huge detox right now. I found out I did a tox screen. I'm full of fucking glyphosate, all right, from Roundup, and I got some pesticides in my belly, and also some barium and thallium from smoking, and I don't know what the barium is from, but yeah, I'm doing this whole detox routine where we do the infrared sauna 3 times a week, and I'm doing coffee enemas, which I can't even recommend highly enough. All right, it sounds terrible, disgusting, but wow, do you feel great afterwards.
Wait, you stick coffee in your butthole?
That's right. Straight up the sphincter. You know what I mean? You just put it up there, and then you let it go.
I know what I'm doing after this call.
Yeah, exactly. Get the funnel ready. All right. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, it sounds crazy. And actually I had a friend who was doing it. I was like, you're nuts, dude. I'm never doing that. And my nutritionist is like, if you want to get this stuff out of your body, you have to do this. It gives your liver a huge break. It pulls parasites out of your body. Like it's amazing. So I'm doing all of these things so that I can detoxify myself and live in optimum health. That's my goal, to have the longest possible, life and be vibrant and healthy and effective for as long as I can until it's time to go on to the next one.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I mean, I really want to acknowledge you for doing that, for having that relationship, for having that realization, and for really like cultivating and fostering even better relationships with your folks. I just think it's so important. Like I said, I know I had a great relationship with my father. I have a great relationship with my mother too. She's still with me. And it's been really hard. It's been really tough losing him. We just got back he was honored. He was put into the Central High School Hall of Fame in Omaha, Nebraska, where we're from. And that was beautiful, and also really, really challenging, you know.
Yeah, I bet.
Going through his stuff. Like, we went through a bunch of storage lockers, and I came away with my dad was a genius. I mean, my dad was a genius. I'm not like bragging. I mean, I guess I am bragging, but I don't mean it like that. Like, he came up with all these, he was very successful in business, came up with all these things that people had never thought about, that he executed, but then also looking through all the things that he was doodling on. I mean, he invented all these light machines, and like, I got to see all of that and go through all that, which was like really great. And also then when I got home, I was just like a puddle, you know. I just totally broke down. I was like, oh, right, I hadn't considered that whole experience was really challenging. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that. So one of my missions, my coach told me, was to create the cleanest ties that I could possibly have with everybody.
Yeah.
So that when they pass away, there's always going to be regret. There's always going to be, I wish I would have. I'm trying to get rid of those. So I made a decision a long time ago that I'm going to put all of my friends on the back burner, all of them. And I'm going to spend as much time as I can with my parents. Now, I'm not saying that's the right answer. But for me, if I have somebody ask me to come over to their house and my parents ask me to come over, I have no problem canceling on my friends to go hang out with my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. And your friends probably understand that too.
And I don't give a fuck if they don't.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. I've been doing really good. I know you told me not to swear too much. I feel like I think I'm only at like 3.
Yeah. No, I feel like I've been swearing more than you have. So I'm kind of proud of you, actually.
It was an interesting observation, though, the fact let's talk about our favorite swear words. It was an interesting observation, though, that was something that you had recognized in my content. Sometimes I get so excited about certain topics, especially around marriage, business, connection with family. I get so excited about it that it just comes out. And I want the message to land on people that you can be in shape. You can have a connection with your spouse and your kids that is something that you can't even believe. And you can make a lot of money at the same time. Like, there's no reason for you to not be able to have it all. And so I'm trying to get through to people. And I don't know if F-bombs are the way, but it just gets me so pumped up sometimes that it just comes out.
That they just come out. Yeah. No, I think they're great, you know, from time to time. Sparingly. I think sparingly they're vastly more effective than, you know, but
I'm working on it.
And also, I don't think there's anything wrong with, by the way, I think your posts are awesome and they're super impactful. I just happened to watch like a bunch of them in a row that were like, fucking you know, there were a lot of F-bombs over and over again.
It's my favorite word.
I was like my favorite word. I gotta make sure.
Yeah.
It's good. It's extremely versatile. You know, the word fuck can be used for so many things. Good things, bad things, great things, terrible things, scary things, active things, you know. It's fucking amazing how much you can fuck with. You know what I mean?
That's right. You're definitely winning this. If there's a scoreboard, you'd be winning.
Yeah, I'm definitely winning. So one of the things that I really liked that I saw in your post was the 80-year-old you conversation. Tell us a little bit about that. You had this dream.
Yeah, I saw myself. And I always thought that if I saw the future version of me, I'd be like, yo, dude, let's have a conversation. I want to know some things. And The Alchemist is one of my favorite books. And I'm going to butcher the line, but the whole premise is like, if we know it's going to work out, that eliminates like part of the fun. And there's just some things we're not meant to know. And so I think part of me just, if I saw him and he were to repeat the line back to me from The Alchemist, I would know that it was all okay. But the bigger thing for me too, as I started to think about that, is like, I think I would be able to tell just by looking into my own eyes.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, one of the things that I talk about pretty frequently on this show, and I think it resonates with a lot of what you have to communicate, is there's this idea in Zen called continuous death, you know, where you're constantly thinking about if I were to die in the next moment, how would I feel about it? If I were to die today, how would I feel about all of my relationships, what I'm up to in my life, how I'm behaving, how I'm experiencing this life? And it's like really like tough thing to think about. It's in a lot of traditions. The Tibetan tradition, the Dalai Lama, they wake up and they meditate on death in the morning, first thing. A lot of different Buddhist traditions do it too. Sufi traditions do it. There's a lot of mystical, kind of the more esoteric traditions are into that whole life, and it's a really tough edge of a sword to come up against. But then what I find in my meditation on that is it really separates the wheat from the chaff. It separates what's truly important. Are these fears that I'm having, is this scarcity really actually important? Or is how my wife feels about me and how my friends feel about me and how the song affected people that are listening? What are the really actually important things? And did I fully go for it? Particularly in those moments when we want to do something that we're afraid of, but we don't want to do it because we're afraid. And so then we would sit and hide. If you think, well, if I die tomorrow, how am I going to feel about that? Not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why, listen,
continuous death.
That's one of the biggest reasons that what I'm doing right now doesn't make a lot of sense to people. I had massive success in real estate. I mean, I'm top 1% in Colorado, right? Top 1% in the nation too. This happened over 6 years. Like last year, I had my first 7-figure year ever. And it was amazing. I worked 8 months out of the year. And now I'm choosing to not shut it down, but give it to somebody else to run. And now I'm starting this coaching company. I started the coaching company back in March. I've been running that. At the end of this year, I'll be walking away from real estate to let somebody else run it and stepping into this. And it doesn't compute with people. And the frame that I have is I'm called to do this. I'm not going to be on my deathbed asking the question, well, what if, why didn't I? But more importantly, one day my son, Luca, and our next son are going to look at me and they're going to tell me whatever their dreams are. And I don't want to have to look back at them and be like, yeah, you should go after it. Only to have them ask me the question, well, why didn't you?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really great. I like it. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I feel the same way. I'm still a musician. I'm still writing songs. I mean, I just came up with another song the other night. I woke up having a dream and I was like, oh, I should write a song about this. That's great. And then I wrote out all the lyrics. I'm pretty old to be doing songwriting, but I'm not. And I know that I'm not. And I don't choose to look at life that way. Yeah. It's as you say, what is your biggest dream? Go after that with all you got. And then if you don't get it, at least you'll know you went after it.
Yeah. And you know what?
And you'll have that satisfaction.
Yeah. And real estate was about building a business. Not that what I'm doing now isn't. And not that this is way more frustrating than real estate ever was. But I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I've finally arrived with what I'm supposed to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're never too old, dude. Keep writing those songs. Keep melting people's faces off. I don't know what kind of music it is, but I'm assuming it might melt people's faces off.
I haven't seen anybody melt. There's been none of that fucking Raiders of the Lost Ark shit happening that I could tell in the audience. It was dark on Sunday night.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did get a lot of really good feedback. So
good.
And it's been going great. So
nice, man.
I shall continue. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So is there anything else that you that you feel like is burning, that you want to get off your chest, that you want to share with people?
Oh man, I think I alluded to it earlier, but I think as people we're after one thing, and it's freedom. And it's freedom in our marriage, it's freedom in our relationships, it's freedom in our business, it's freedom with ourselves. I think the only way to really get that is to figure out, well, what do I want? Am I willing to do the work? And in getting to it, am I willing to let it all go to go pursue the next thing? And there's this level of freedom that money will never buy, sex will never buy, marriage will never buy. And you can have it in this moment, and you can also cultivate and design it in any way that you want. So your life is just a series of the stories you tell yourself. And I'm a big believer that if you change your stories, you can change your life.
Beautiful. That's great. That's great. I love that. Your life is just a series of stories that you tell yourself. And if you change the story, say the last part again.
If you change your story, you can change your life.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's great. That's a fucking bumper sticker right there. You know what I mean? Big time.
Trademark.
Right.
Trademark.
Yeah. Boom. T-shirts. It would be a good T-shirt, actually. Awesome. Well, listen, I asked this question of all my guests, so I'm going to ask you as well, Sergio. For you, what is sacred and what is insane?
What is sacred and what is insane? Sacred is the pursuit of becoming more than you are today. Growth and expansion. And insanity is playing by the rules that are imparted on you.
Nice. That's a great answer. Well done. All right.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, Sergio, thanks so much for joining us on Lunacy. How can people find you? How can they get in touch with you? What's your handle? What's your handle, babe?
Yeah, get on Instagram, Sergio.Nazarro.
Okay, great.
That's it.
Awesome. And they can come after your coaching services that way, and there's kind of info on that sort of a deal if people want to engage with you in that regard.
Absolutely. There's a link in the bio to book a free discovery call. I'm happy to do that with anybody.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, keep up the good work, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother.
All right. You bet. Cheers.
Oh.
Now you can howl?
He just woke up. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Ready? Let's do it again.
Yeah. All right.
This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How?
Oh.
That's good. That's good.
Nice work. Dude.
I can tell you're pulling back, but I understand. Like, he's
Yeah.
just waking up. He might freak out. So
He might freak out.
Awesome. All right, everybody. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in.